Blake's Buzz Live. Buzz, 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 buzz. It's Blake's Buzz Live. Buzz, 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 buzz. It's Blake's Buzz Live. More, hate less, read comics. It's Blake's Buzz Live.
Buzz, buzz, babies.
Buzz, buzz, babies, and happy Tuesday. It's, I almost said it's new comic book day, but it's not. Well, I guess it is if you buy DC Comics, right? We get 2 comic book days. We are so lucky as nerds now. We get 2 comic days a week, maybe even more if you guys do Kickstarter or anything weird like that. Anyways, I've got a really cool guest tonight I'm about to bring on, but real quick, we've got some sponsor action to drop. Yet again, Mr. Will Allred is sponsoring this show with the current Kickstarter for Crossover Division, the deluxe hardcover volume 1 is out. Fictions and Other Truths. All right, guys, it's broken 5K. We need 6K to fund, and I know for a fact we've got some sweet stretch goals planned on this. He's got some really great back matter. He wants to make this book bigger, better, harder, and more amazing for your shelves. Really make them put some work in to hold this baby up. Really want you guys to check this out. I'm going to put a link in the comments so that y'all can do so. It's a very cool book. It's a celebration of literature. These books are coming to life and invading the real world, and these characters have to they have to kind of save the day. But I could say a lot about it, but I'll just go into my movie trailer voice and get you that solicit real quick. When stories come to life and threaten to fracture reality beyond repair, only an English professor and a research librarian have the knowledge and smarts to save us all. Join Hank Wallace and Hector Ramirez in Crossover Division Volume 1, Fictions and Other Truths, as they encounter the War of the Worlds, Dracula, and Shakespearean tragedy in a small Midwestern town. This limited edition oversized hardcover collects Crossover Divisions number 1 through 4. It is live on Kickstarter, ladies and gentlemen. It has 10 days left to go and just shy of $900 to fund. Please check it out. It is a great, fun, wonderful comic book. I love the art. There's some awesome variants. There's tons of add-ons from the previous campaigns you guys can get. Really, really hope you check it out. Crossover Division from Will Allred. Peep that link in the comments. And now, without further ado, let me get this picture off the screen. I've got an amazing guest tonight who is also a podcaster. He's a comic writer. He's a screenwriter. He's standing up for the writers. He's marching. He's protesting. He's just an all-around good fucking dude. David Avallone's in the house. What's up, sir? How you doing?
Thank you, Blake. Thank you. That's very nice. I'm good. I have my drink. I'm heading into their early evening.
What are you drinking? You're drinking something fancy over there.
I like to add coffee to a White Russian.
Okay. I like that.
When I need the combination of relaxation but high energy that podcasting requires. Yeah, it's a White Russian with espresso in it, basically. Someone actually suggested a Kolchak as a name for it. I was calling it the Chernobyl. I think my wife came up with the Chernobyl. The Russian front, or the Putin's folly. These are all good areas.
I love caffeine and alcohol. Usually I always make the mistake. I usually do it on Super Bowl Sundays too. I get like a couple cans of Four Loko and absolutely regret it. But I still don't really understand how that shit is legal, because it's more punchier than Red Bull. Like if they just made an energy drink, I feel like it would sell, and also maybe a lot of people would die. But like that and the malt liquor, and like you get this really great buzz really fast, and then you hate your life even faster. I feel like I always go back to it.
It definitely seems that way. But yeah, I mostly stick to straight liquor all by itself. But every once in a while, I need the extra jolt. And I am old enough to remember Jolt Cola.
Jolt Cola? My dad used to put peanuts in it. He used to like for the salt. It was so weird. He would like get like the 20-ounce plastic bottle, open it up, chug it, and then pour like peanuts in it, and I was like, what the
that is some. I know that's a thing. It's just never been my thing. Yeah, Jolt came out when I was in college, which was pretty good timing.
And that was one of the last energy sodas that like it tasted good. It tasted similar to Coca-Cola or like, Pepsi, right?
Yeah, it was Coca-Cola with the caffeine amped up in it. And
I
again,
missed
perfect
that.
for college kids.
Here we got Mr. David is on, writer of Nottingham in the chat. David says you should just call it a Mishka.
Sure. That's another good one.
Well, we're here. I know some of you may think we're here to talk about alcohol and my mistakes with Four Loko. Maybe I should do a live one day. Just get class. I haven't drank on a live stream in a while. I've been unemployed, so right. I had my first payday recently, so I could buy a bottle of booze if
Congratulations.
I wanted to.
I usually do. I mean, I drink a little bit during podcasts, but a couple of times I've done Facebook Live things during Kickstarters, and there was one where it was 90 minutes and I just got hammered. And I have a pretty strong constitution. I get my shit together, but it was just kind of funny doing it and being like, I am getting hammered in front of a couple of hundred people who I'm hoping to give me money to write a comic book. So that was kind of funny.
Shout out to my co-host Cole's Comic Claims, who knows I got pretty drunk on our live stream a few weeks ago. We had a guest on Blake and Cole read a book, and our friend Chris, who does the Fortress of Comic News podcast, and we all were drinking, and I just went overboard, man. It turned into like Cocaine Story Power Hour after we talked about the book.
Sure.
I still argue that I quit that and I don't do it anymore. And as one should, it's dangerous, it's expensive and stupid.
Sure.
But like now that I don't do it anymore, it's I should be allowed to talk about it and tell the fun story.
That's I mean, if there's one purpose in life to doing stupid shit, it's being able to tell the story about it later. That is the only justification for doing it.
Well, speaking of stories, we bringing it back around. You have a pretty cool comic coming out tomorrow from Dynamite, Elvira in Monsterland #1, and we were talking about this in the green room, folks. I read like 25 issues of Elvira because I'm the best fucking podcast host ever, and also because it's really, really good. Like that first 12 issue series that you did.
Thank you.
When I got into that, I was like sold. Like really, really, the puns, the jokes, she has so much agency and oh my God, like she just bleeds like sexuality and feminism and female empowerment and it like it's political when it needs to be, kind of, but it's not. It's so organic. It's not overbearing, and it's just fun. It's so
the character that she created, and this is the thing about so much stuff. The character she created is third wave feminist to its bones, and there's no escaping that. If you present the character as created by Cassandra, she's nobody's fool. She's always in charge of her own shit. She always does what she wants to do. She's a rebel. She's Groucho Marx in the sense that she is an outsider to society that pushes back on the squares and the prudes that try to hold her down. It's a character template as old as, like I said, Groucho Marx and Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
She just it's Bugs Bunny in the dress. As opposed to Bugs Bunny not in the dress. We met for drinks a couple of years ago. Actually, I had dinner at the Dresden Room, and I was with my wife, and she said, I gotta say, I was really surprised when you said you were bringing your wife, because I was sure you were gay. And I said, where does that come from? And she says, and this is a very flattering thing, but she said, everyone that's ever been able to write me well has been gay, super gay.
Oh, wow.
And I said, the thing is, they may be coming at it from a different angle than I am. My angle, people very nicely say that I capture her voice very well. And a lot of that is that it's such a well-defined voice. It's not, it doesn't feel like heavy lifting to imagine what Elvira will do or say in any given situation. But I told her that, to me, the genius of the character is that it's the hot woman, but the personality is a 1950s Jewish Catskills stand-up, working a little blue after midnight when the kids have gone to bed. No actual 4-letter words, but everything's a sex joke.
Yeah.
And everything's a bad pun. and it's, it's more that than anything else. It's Mel Brooks more than it's Mae West, actually.
Yeah.
And that's the key to me for writing her, is that kind of Catskills Borscht Belt. And that's the, I grew up around that stuff, and that comes very, very naturally to me. So that's kind of my approach to it. I will say, I always like to credit Dave Acosta, who drew the first 12 issues of Elvira, and I made sure that we always have him doing covers for the current series. I was initially reluctant to take the gig. It was offered to me after Betty Page, and I was like, is this going to be my niche now? The hot lady model that's not organically a comic book character. And Dave sent me covers to like Jerry Lewis comics and Bob Hope comics and Angel and the Ape and Mad Magazine, and said, the thing is, it's not a horror comic with comedy. It's a comedy comic set in a horror world.
Yeah.
Worry less about the horror and telling a good horror story, and way more about it being funny on every page.
Yeah.
Which is way more pressure, honestly.
Yeah. Comedy in comics is hard.
Yeah.
Well, in anything, but especially in comics, like it's a lot of elements have to be working flawlessly to pull off the jokes, especially when it's just like, when it's banger after banger after banger, pun after pun after pun. Like, you got to really, you have to really like flex your writing muscles to control your audience and not tire them out. And again, like, you do that magnificently, even when binging these comics, like when reading several at a time and hitting them hard, like it never felt too much. I was never bored. Right. And just tons of great, like, I'm so glad we did this interview, because I don't know that I would have ever picked these up. It's not, well, I'm busy a lot, so I don't get to read a lot of random things anymore. My focal points are controlled by the powers that be, who write my paychecks now, and clients and stuff. But it's like I said, I knew they were there. I remember her from my childhood, but I didn't have a big connection with her, so it's not like this series ever really called out to me. But I'm so like, I will definitely be reading Monsterland. Like, I'm in it, dude. Like,
I mean, that's the
I'm
thing.
ready.
The tricky thing in creating a comic for her was to come up with a way to honor that persona. But like the story of her being, fish out of water in a small town, running into trouble with prudes, like, that's the first movie. The second movie is her in a sort of cheesy Hammer-esque horror movie. That's funny. There wasn't a natural, like, what are you going to do with her in a comic book thing? And I think it's the same thing. When someone sees the covers, no matter what we put on the covers, it's hard for them to understand what's going to be in that issue. It's hard for them to understand that it's going to be a story, that it's going to be funny, that it's going to have a bit of beginning, middle, and end that they're going to enjoy, instead of just being like a bunch of jokes or just a horror story. I mean, when I got it, someone else had actually pitched something to Cassandra and failed. And I asked them, please send me the failed pitch. I want to see what you didn't like. And they were perfectly good stories, but the pitches themselves weren't funny. Okay. And the comedy element of the pitch wasn't really present. And I mean, the last two series, Monsterland and Horrorland, Monsterland being the current one, which is a sequel to Horrorland, that we do recap pretty much the entire Elvira series in the first 5 pages of Monsterland. It is basically me finding a way to do, like, Horrorland in particularly, every issue was basically the Mad Magazine parody of that movie, except Elvira was in it. Was the first issue was Elvira in Psycho. The second issue was Elvira in The Shining. The third issue was Elvira in Alien. Fourth issue was Elvira in Nightmare on Elm Street movies, 3 of them. And the 5th one was Elvira in almost every David Cronenberg movie that I love.
And then Loki, a little bit of Loki action.
Well, I did sneak Loki into the Nightmare on Elm Street one, partially because I will confess, those aren't my favorite movies. And I didn't see a lot in them that I wanted to play around with. I mean, you notice I dipped into 3 of them, and I don't think you have to be paying really close attention to notice it's the 3 that Wes Craven directed. So it's the 3 good ones.
Yeah, that you did. I like how you went back to New Nightmare was the kind of meta one, right?
New Nightmare was the one that really, the whole series is meta.
Yeah.
So, it's funny that I did not come up with this thematically. And this is one of those things about writing. Sometimes you write something and you have an idea of what the thematic elements of it. And you need that even in comedy. But a lot of times you set the pieces in motion and don't really know what you're going for. And one of the things that I thought, it was literally just a random thing I did to give her a mission every issue, is that when she changed universes, when she hit the remote, she would find herself in the new universe, but the remote, the MacGuffin, the magical artifact, was now in the hands of whoever the villain was. And again, I did that just honestly, as a very simple, this gives her a challenge every issue that she's got to overcome. There's no real logical reason for it. But what I loved about it is it gave me every single one of those movies then became about, well, but who's the real villain? Like my favorite one is Alien. She's she's helping the Nostromo crew run away from, defeat whatever the alien, but the alien doesn't have the remote. Mother is the villain of the movie Alien. Like being able to make it about that. Wes Craven, by his own admission in New Nightmare, is the villain of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies because he's the one who created Freddy. That was his idea. That wasn't mine, but it made it a fun way to go, no, that's the villain of this movie.
And the way you make her figure that out, like it's a Scooby-Doo narrative too, almost, right? But she's the whole team. Like she doesn't have the mystery team. It's just, it's all her. And again, just simple ways that you give her such agency and prowess, like from panel to panel. And I love that too. The Alien issue was probably one of my favorite. That movie has a soft spot in my heart because my dad showed it to me when I was a tiny child and I had screaming nightmares for 2 weeks.
Is not a good movie to show a tiny
No,
child.
it's not. It is not. But it definitely, after the emotional scarring healed, I now have this, I love sci-fi and I love horror. And I owe that to my dad. I mean, he probably should have waited a couple years to show that to me, but it built this thing inside of me that has stayed around even for decades now, and so I love that franchise, the Xenomorphs, the Predators, everything, and so
I consider trying to drag elements from the other Alien movies into it, but I kept it down to 2 jokes. One was Jim Cameron getting overrun by multiple aliens, and 2, which is my favorite joke in the issue, is when Elvira says to Ripley, when they offer you the 3rd one,
don't take it.
and Ripley says, wait, what? And she says, my conscience is clear. I did my best for her. That was my favorite joke in that issue. And it was tricky limiting yourself. I think my favorite of that series is The Shining.
Yeah. That was good too.
And I think it's largely because I'm a Stanley Kubrick fan and I'm actually not that fond of the movie The Shining, but it allowed me to just work in a whole spectrum of jokes about that movie and inside gags and and jokes about Jack Nicholson's career and jokes about how Kubrick treated Wendy, so there was a lot of, and having Stanley in it. I think the directors appear in most of I didn't put Cronenberg in the Cronenberg issue, but everyone else, I think, got a cameo at one point or another. Yeah, the Alien issue had Ridley. The Alien issue had Ridley Scott and James Cameron, so that was a good one.
Yeah, I love the argument about you can't just have one alien.
One alien is lame. You need lots of aliens.
But yeah, it's so interesting how when you started breaking the 4th wall initially, I was taken aback, right? And of course I loved it, and which is why one of the reasons why I compared this to a lot of great Deadpool comics is because it's that punny quirky, strong humor, great joke writing. The fourth wall's breaking. There's great action. There's great art, right? A lot of similarities with Deadpool, but there's also like a little bit of sex appeal and the spooky factor.
Yeah.
But when you start bringing the directors in, man, like when we break we break the fourth wall, and then we break through the curtain, and then we see like there's cameras on set and things, and it's just like, did you ever like get lost or have to map out like
they're
usually
pretty clear in my head about where we are and what we're doing. It was tricky because there's a trope of multiversal stories, just like time travel stories, that when you break things, when you break the universe, when you make things happen that aren't supposed to happen, everything starts to collapse.
Mm-hmm.
So when she breaks the story in Psycho, Vince Vaughn shows up from the remake because the universe is trying to plug another Norman Bates in there after they've knocked Anthony Perkins unconscious. And then the next step after that, logically, is for Anthony Perkins to show up, for Alfred Hitchcock to show up. And I get to make a bunch of jokes about Alfred Hitchcock. So it's usually pretty clear in my head where the rippling is going on and what's being broken. The sci-fi of it, like I said, there are tropes to those kind of stories, and I try to stick to them, the quote unquote rules of those. Mm-hmm. And also there are, one of the tropes of multiversal and time travel stories, like Loki, is that there are agents that protect that. Mm-hmm. And one group of those agents is the TVA from Loki, which I make fun of with the organization WOW because it's Owen Wilson, and making him say wow in the comic was what I gotta say, like with risk breaking my arm, patting my own back. When I came up with that as the name of the organization, I was very pleased with myself. But then also in literature, I mean, and this is Dave Acosta said about one of our issues of, he's like, are we putting out a syllabus with this so that people know what books they have to read to understand your jokes? But I mean, and I always try to do the Bugs Bunny thing of even if you don't like talk about a reference on a reference on a reference, even if you don't know that Peter Weller played the character of Bill Lee in Naked Lunch, who is in the book Nova Express, Agent Lee of the Nova Express, who fights the people trying to destroy the universe. Even if you do not follow that, it's probably just funny to see Peter Weller in a suit and tie talking like a beatnik and protecting the universe from incursions, So it doesn't matter if you haven't read Nova Express by William Burroughs. Like I'm not, just like in the one that Dave was referring to. And a lot of this stuff may look planned and a lot of it is accidental. When we did the first Elvira issue, it was just going to be a 4-issue miniseries.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's supposed to end in issue 4. And I introduced a villain that was based on Faust, the historical Faust, the guy who supposedly sold his soul to the devil. And because Dave and I have very similar frames of references, he said, so you're thinking Richard Burton from his terrible adaptation of Faust, right? I was like, yes, absolutely. Draw Richard Burton. And about issue 2, they said, well, issue 1 is the pre-sales are off the charts. It was actually Dynamite's best-selling issue that year. Can you go to 8? I said, okay, I will figure out a second arc. Well, the ending of an arc with Faust is Faust gets sent to hell by Mephistopheles. And I thought it would be very funny if Elvira just kind of got scooped up with Faust, since they were, having this conflict with one another. And the deepest cuts of all, so I'm thinking about, okay, you're sending Faust to hell. Faust is Richard Burton from his terrible movie, Dr. Faustus. What is that character's version of hell? And what turns out to be that character's version of hell is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, starring Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, but Elizabeth Taylor is Helen of Troy, which is who Faust was obsessed with. Part of the reason he sold the soul to the devil so that he could meet and have sex with Helen of Troy.
Okay.
That is a crazy deep cut. The first issue.
And see, I just went with it. Like I didn't know any of that, but you could still just roll with it.
But in the first 3 pages of Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, number 5, I think Dave Acosta said, so you're referencing Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf by Edward Albee, Christopher Marlowe's play Faust, and Dante's Inferno. Like, and we haven't gotten to page 4 yet. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. Those are all in there. That was when he said you should put out a bibliography or a syllabus for these things. But like I said, to me, the joke, if the joke only works if you recognize that it's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, it's not that funny. Mm-hmm. I think the idea that you send Faust to hell and he's got a suburban housewife, but it's Helen of Troy and she's throwing a glass of whiskey at his head. Hopefully that's funny regardless of you recognizing that it's Elizabeth Taylor. And in issue 8, when we see them again, almost everything they say is literally from the play Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Oh, wow.
I actually, like when she says, you disgust me or whatever, like that's not very nice, Helen. That's all directly from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And if people recognize it, they recognize it. If people don't know why there's a man in 18th century garb named Barry Lyndon in the lobby of the hotel in the Shining issue, hopefully it's ridiculous enough that it's funny, that they don't go, well, where did this 18th century dude come from? Like, what is that about? It's like, no, it's just Ryan O'Neal from a different movie, but that's okay.
Yeah. Your Hollywood proficiency, like really, you're obviously like very well read and well watched, and like, and that like the intelligence embedded like between the jokes and the action is very impressive.
Well, it's easier to get away with dumb jokes if you're being very, very smart about your dumb jokes. It softens the blow of all of the truly, truly awful puns. I think my wife's favorite title I've ever done was Stoker, I Hardly Know Her, for the Bram Stoker issue. And it's the cheapest, cheesiest joke in the world. But that issue is a perfect example. I didn't really know what I was going to do with it, except the whole Bram Stoker meets Elvira and, Vlad the Impaler, which seemed interesting. And then I read up on Bram Stoker, and holy shit, was that guy a mess. And writing about it, he had a wife who he was crazy about, who didn't love him, but maybe he was in the closet, and maybe they were both in love with Oscar Wilde, and maybe Dracula is based on Oscar Wilde.
Wow. So I knew there was a lot of homoeroticism in Brahms, because he had to hide it, right? There's so much of that chug of Dracula is getting through the filler that hides the homoerotic discourse in there, which of course you had to do then, because he would have been burned alive and no one would have read that book. But I've definitely heard
Oscar,
that he was
Oscar Wilde went to jail.
I didn't know about the possible Oscar Wilde crush though. Like that's intriguing.
His wife was obsessed with Oscar Wilde and not interested in him, and he was jealous. And, I've never been a giant fan of vampire things. And I'd reading up on them, I went, this is why I don't like vampire stuff. It all has a lot of it, particularly the original recipe version of it, has this incel, oh man, bad boys get all the chicks, is like the subtext in Dracula. And I can see why some people love it, but that bad boys get all the chicks is something I got over in high school. Like I'm not obsessed with it now. I think that would be sad.
Yeah.
For a middle-aged man to be obsessed with bad boys get all the chicks.
You got deadlines, baby. You got bigger shit to worry about.
Yeah, I got bigger fish to fry than bad boys get all the chicks. And also hasn't really been my experience in the fullness of time. So I'm a big believer in research, and I always, like you read the comics for this show, I always do as much research as I possibly can, because a lot of times the jokes are handed to you on a silver platter when you do the research. I don't know if you had time to read Elvira Meets Vincent Price.
Yep.
Okay, so I was I had said yes to do it. I needed a pitch for it. And a friend of mine, comics editor named Val D'Orazio, out of left field, posted a blog about this Vincent Price movie that was announced in the early 70s, and it was cast and they never shot it. But because of really lazy movie reviewers and editors, some movie reviewer actually reviewed it without seeing it, assuming that it had been made and released.
Yeah. And
because of that, it got into some movie guide from 1971. And then that got reprinted for 30 years. And now that movie, the Ares Computer, that movie has a page on the IMDb. And the first trivia item is this movie doesn't actually exist. Yeah, which is like, well, then why not remove the page, man? Like, why is it still up? But Val told this hilarious story about this Vincent Price movie that's this legendary movie that no one's seen because they never got around to making it. And I went, well, that's the mystery. That's the I can do 5 issues about that. That's fantastic. And I ended up using that as absolutely the plot for the entire series.
Yeah, it was out. We saved the world with that unreleased movie.
Yeah, and because it was the rise of the RAM, mine was, or no, it was the Ares Computer. I made it Rise of the Ram.
Yeah,
and making it a ram-headed god, I was like, okay, in Egyptian, that's Amun-Ra. You got the Book of the Dead and the Book of the Day of the End of all things. And I'm like, okay. And again, I learned a ton about Egyptian mythology that I did not previously know.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my favorite. I won't say it's my favorite part of the job, but like I got asked to do an 8-page Alan Quatermain story for Savage Tales once by Dynamite senior editor Joe Ryman. And I said yes immediately. And then I stared off into space and I went, so you're now going to spend 3 days learning about South Africa at the turn of the century to write 8 friggin' pages of an Alan Quatermain story that you could probably knock out without doing any research. But no, man, read about it. I reached out to a friend of mine who lives in Johannesburg and asked about, so there's this beach. Is this beach a good place for this to happen? And, blah, 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 blah. When was the last time you were in the Zambezi land? Just out of curiosity. But that stuff is great. I learned so much about Southern California where I live. I got asked to write a Zorro story by American mythology. And I was like, well, here's I'm going to learn everything about Alta California in 1805. That sounds really cool to do.
So is this like one of your main starting points? Like before you outline, before you script, you hit the books and you nerd out?
A little bit. Yeah. A little bit. I mean,
a
lot of times, like when I was asked to do a Doc Savage thing, I literally I have this great history book called The Timetables of History that breaks down pretty much everything that's ever happened on Earth of any significance up till about 1973. I could probably get a newer edition, but I remember the things that have happened since 1973. And I went through the late 30s when I got the Doc Savage thing, just going, what real thing would have attracted Doc Savage's attention in the late 30s? And one of them was Amelia Earhart going missing and increased volcanic activity in the Pacific and a couple of other small things that I didn't end up using. But I made a list of there was this, unrest in France about fascism in the mid 30s. There was, Amelia Earhart went missing in the Pacific. And you go, okay, well, that's a Doc Savage story. When I did The Shadow, I made the villains American Nazis because it was taking place in 1939. And I was like, well, I always feel like The Shadow is weird when you get him out in New York City. He's such a New York City character. Yeah. It's like Batman leaving Gotham. I don't know that I want to see that. The guy's got enough on his plate in Gotham City. And I just imagine, Batman, I know he's got private jets, but I just always imagine, Batman sitting in coach in his costume, reading. And it's like, I don't want to think about Batman going through customs or Batman, at passport control. That's just boring. So I wanted to keep him New York, but I also wanted to deal with what was going on in the rest of the world. And the American Nazis had big rallies in New York in the late 30s, so I decided to deal with that. And yeah, it's free story, and I'm always so mad when people ignore it. And I'll say something about a beloved cultural artifact and a writer who I admire. At the end of Max Allan Collins' Road to Perdition, in the movie at least, he says something about, and I never picked up a gun again, or I never fired a gun again.
Mm-hmm.
It bugs me that kid's going to be 18 when World War II breaks out.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me how he never touched a gun again. Was he a conscience? Like, it's not a mistake, but it's an avenue left unexplored because no one involved with that movie thought, well, wait a minute, this kid who says he never touched a gun again is draft age through the entirety of the Second World War. How is that not a story?
Yeah.
And you write the story you want to write, but you could have done a framing, just as an example off the top of my head, you could have done a framing device in that movie where the little kid has grown up and he's a medic in the South Pacific in 1943. And a guy is shot in front of him and he leans down to help the guy, and a Japanese soldier starts charging him with a bayonet, and there's a Thompson lying right in front of him that he could defend himself with. And then you start your flashback to the movie and then you start with the first time I saw a Thompson submachine gun was in 1931. You know what I mean? Like, and then I know why the kid never touched a gun again.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that, okay, he became a medic when World War II broke out. And again, you can't fault people for not writing what you would have written, but I kind of hate it when you just have an idea, you have a story that ignores the historical reality of the time in which it takes place. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of have to deal with, to me, those challenges are worth taking on. When you take on, I'm going to set something in this year, that means I can't have this. I can't have this joke. I can't have that idea. I mean, this is the dumbest, smallest version of that. But in the Doc Savage story, there was a line where I needed one of his assistants to make a crack about the other one being a whiz kid. And in my rough draft, I had him say, oh, look at young Tom Edison here. There was a movie with Spencer Tracy in the 1930s called Young Tom Edison. It came out 2 years after my comic took place. Now, you could, in fact, make a reference to Tom Edison before the movie came out. It's a famous enough character. But I changed it. It was something involving a radio, so I made it Marconi instead, because the movie Young Tom, that's a degree of ridiculous slavishness to reality. I had an issue of Betty Page where I wanted her to say, do what now? And I literally went on Facebook and I said, friends from the deep South, ask your grandmother if she was saying do what now in the early 1950s. And I actually got someone from Nashville, Tennessee, which is where Betty was mostly from, who said, yes, my grandmother said we were still saying do what now in the 1950s. I said, great. I want to be accurate.
That's just like, that's just something I don't, as I I've dabbled in writing and stuff, and everybody jokes because I always bring up my MFA program that I dropped out of, but I mean, like I wrote short stories and but that's one thing I never, I believed in research for, like, I did research for characters or like for jobs I didn't know about or things like that to, like, try and make things believable. But
Sure.
That's one thing, like, my mind doesn't go there. My mind isn't just like, oh, like this time period, or even like 90s or pre 9/11 or pre cell phones, things like that. Right. It's, when you think about what time period you're writing in, and to just automatically like go there and like find these like, cracks in the armor.
I will say that I'm lucky. My father was born in 1924. My mother was born in 36. I grew up hearing a certain amount of, like, the Betty Page comic takes place in the early 50s. My father more or less still spoke like that.
Okay.
Now he was from New York City, not Nashville, so it's a different kind of slang. But I always think the joy of writing, period, is that you get to essentially write in another language with different idioms. The first episode of I think it's the first or second episode of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Someone says to someone else, "Let's do lunch." That's the 80s, man. Like nobody in the 1950s or 60s was saying, "Let's do lunch" to one another.
Yeah.
And there are phrases that you can imagine someone saying, even if everyone wasn't saying it. But that was such a cringy thing for me, because I was actually writing Betty Page when Mrs. Maisel went on the air, and I was just like, I'm mad at you people with $1 trillion times my budget. You could hire assistants to go over the scripts for this shit. I just got me. You know, like I'm just alone doing it, looking shit up, and I'm doing a pretty good job not having someone say, "Let's do lunch" in 1953. You know, and again, I get that it's small, but I always argue that I think people, when there's enough of that, even people who don't know what the truth was, it feels wrong in a way they can't put their finger on.
Yeah.
Things have a resonance. Costumes have a resonance. Props have a resonance, you know, and it's small. Another equally ridiculous thing in Doc Savage Ring of Fire, there's a scene where they're operating a machine gun out of an airplane. And I think Dave Acosta sketched in Browning machine guns. And I said, those existed, but Lewis guns, the one with the disc on the top, are so much more evocative of the 1930s. Brownings look like World War II. Lewis guns look like 1935. Even though it's 39 and they both exist, I want to evoke the 1930s more strongly. And again, did that work for 0.001% of my audience? I have no idea. No idea.
Hey, it's the details though, and you really do have to appreciate the details. You also have to appreciate the comments from live viewers, which I'm doing a real shitty job of doing. But we got Cole says comics is a great place for horror. I haven't read a ton of comedy comics that have worked. It's hard. Cole, it's really hard, but I know I feel like we've been co-hosts and friends long enough now. Like I do think you would get a kick out of these Elvira comics, and they are on Hoopla, ladies and gentlemen. Like I
have one recommendation for some of the best comedy comics I've ever read.
Oh, well, let's drop it.
Almost any Kyle Baker.
Okay.
Particularly when he's being funny on Kyle Baker's Plastic Man is fucking hilarious. I don't know if they're available on any of the digital services. I don't know if they were collected anywhere, but if you can find them, holy shit, those comics are, I don't know why this is the funniest thing I've ever read in a comic book. Maybe because I'm a Jack Kirby fan. He had Metron. You remember Metron?
Yeah.
The Spock of the New God, basically. He had Metron guest star in a Plastic Man. And when his name is said, there's a little asterisk. And at the bottom of the panel is a little caption bar. It says, "You can read more about Metron in Metron Adventure Comics, available monthly from DC." I don't know why that floored me, but the idea that there were Metron Adventure Comics out there somewhere being published monthly. I mean, and it was also a joke about, yes, I'm using an incredibly obscure, unloved character from the New Gods here because that alone is funny. But yeah, his OGNs are hilarious. Why I Hate Saturn from the 80s is just an incredible piece of work. The Cowboy Wally show, I think those are both either still in print or not that hard to find. Nice. But he was a huge influence on me in terms of comedy in comic books, because Cole is right. You really don't see it done that well.
Mm-hmm. It's hard
that often. And again, overall, like what I'm really referencing is Mad Magazine, particularly in Monsterland and Horrorland.
Yeah.
It's a very Mad Magazine satire of a movie kind of a thing.
And that's another reason why I latched on to these comics so tightly, is because that was one of that and Cracked. Like
Yeah.
when I saw those at the grocery store and got them, and I remember like they did, I think it was Cracked. I read Cracked more than Mad because they were more available at that. And when I was like going to grocery stores and stuff, when comics
Sure.
used to be everywhere. But I remember like they did a Power Rangers episode and the art was always so damn good. Like really great line art, shading, and
I feel like
grayscale.
the great John Severin drew a lot of their movie parodies, or at least drew some of them that I read. I was more of a Mad guy because we were on a road trip. I think the classic All-American drive from Jersey to Florida. And at the first rest stop, first gas station, my dad bought me a Mad magazine.
Nice.
And when we got home, I had already read it, 50 times. And they got me a subscription, and I had a subscription to Mad magazine at the very least from like 74 to 84.
Wow.
And I still have almost all of them. And
back when they used to fold them up in the envelopes and mail them to you, no one cared about it.
And the artist Mort Drucker was maybe the greatest caricaturist who has ever lived. His art was amazing, and his caricatures of famous actors were amazing. And Cuber Ball does an incredible job in this the whole series. But the first couple of pages where you're looking at 1931 Dracula, and he's got Lugosi and Dwight Fry doing Renfield and all that, and then you got Peter Weller on for the next couple of pages. He does an amazing job, and this one in particular is an incredibly difficult comic because there's a new set of characters and locations and likenesses every 2 to 3 pages.
Yeah, you move around a lot in that first issue.
Well, there are so many great iconic Draculas. I wanted to get in as many as I could. I ran out of pages for Interview with a Vampire. I was gonna do Interview with a Vampire, and I just simply ran out of space. And then in the second issue, which is coming next month, which is called Frankie Goes to Hollywood, I mostly concentrate on 2 Frankenstein movies. And then the third issue is called Howl.
Oh.
That's a little more back in the mode of the first issue, where it's a different werewolf or wolfman. I deal with them not being the same thing necessarily. Werewolf and a wolfman are not the same thing. That takes up issue 3. Issue 4, which is called You Don't Look Jewish, mostly takes place inside Destroy All Monsters.
Okay.
Which is my favorite Godzilla movie from my childhood. But yeah, and a la Mad Magazine, when we're worried about getting sued, I change all of the names to satire versions.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Godzilla,
which I love too.
Like, Godzilla is Kingzilla.
Nice.
Rodan is Crowdan and has a giant crow head. There's a giant crab called Dungeness, the Nebula crab.
So is the new one going to be? Is it a 4 issue or
it's
5 issue? It is 5. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I noticed you switched it up a little bit. Well, I like the design of miniseries that you utilize, and one of the cool things that I noticed is that, the structure carries over. It's a big story. It's not, even though like they release in miniseries with the subtitles and the new numberings, like it's very much a continuation of what happened previously. So you've told this like big sweeping genre. It's like,
look, if this
universal expanding story.
If this were the 1970s or the 1980s, what would be coming out tomorrow would be Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, number 30.
Yeah.
It is literally the 30th, and there are 26 other issues, and then 3 specials that are 40 pages, and 36 pages. But and they exist within the continuity of the whole series, but they are standalone enough that you don't need them to. This one follows pretty hard on the heels of Elvira in Horrorland, which followed pretty hard on the heels of Elvira Meets Vincent Price. There was more of a gap between Vincent Price and Shape of Elvira, which was the other.
Which was also like I love the Shape of Water, like the spinoff. We got some more people in the chat. This is cool. People are coming to hang out with us. This is awesome. Comics by the Bay, thanks for tuning in. Backtrack, and David is on, who's also writes a historical comic. History is the best place to puzzle out. Yeah, I mean, hey, human beings are fucked up little turkey necks, right? Like, we are weirdos, and the things that we've done throughout our course of being on this planet is like to ignore that and not use that in your storytelling. Like, we have a wild history, and you got to take advantage of it.
It's leaving stuff on the table. I mean, perfectly. The Zorro comic had a supernatural bent. They wanted a Zorro horror comic, so I wrote Zorro versus zombies. Well, in order to deal with zombies, where did the zombies come from? So I actually I researched the beliefs of the Tongva people who lived in LA County before Europeans got here, the Tongva and the Gabrielino and some of the other tribes. And I learned about the Tongva afterworld, which was named Shoshongna, and the goddess of the dead, whose name was Tarmalok. Why use the devil one more time when I got fucking Tarmalok out there, who has never been, to the best of my knowledge, in a comic book. Shoshonga has never been in a comic book, but it's about Southern California. What the devil, the afterlife in Southern California in 1805 is either Catholics or Tongva, essentially. And I chose Tongva because we've seen plenty of Catholic afterlives, and that's less interesting to me. I think that
as someone who's raised Catholic, it's not that interesting to me either.
Yeah, it's just that thing of like, I mean, as a complete aside, someday I'll write an essay about this, but I think the popularity of the Cthulhu mythos and Lovecraftian stuff is that if you're doing supernatural stuff, it's a cosmology that allows you to do all of the things you would do with the devil, but you don't have to use the devil. You have a character. Yeah. It's royalty-free devil, basically, that doesn't get into religion. It's a way to do stories that would be religious horror in any other framing, really. But it allows you to do that without invoking religion, without having to have your hero be a priest saying the power of Christ compels you. It can be, the Dunwich Horror. It can be a guy reading from it can be a college professor reading from the Necronomicon can save the world.
Yeah.
As opposed to it being a priest. And I think that sort of non-secular supernaturalism is the appeal of Lovecraft. So like, I've used Lovecraft in Betty Page faced down all the great old ones at one point or another in Betty Page Unbound. And I had a lot of fun with those characters, but yeah, like I said, the Tongva provided me with my villains and my not even villains with my supernatural context for my Zorro story, and I was very, very happy to use it. And again, it was just sitting there for free.
Yeah,
all I had to do was look, and in Los Angeles County, all I had to do was literally look around me. In that story, the zombies rise out of the La Brea tar pits, which I was very, very fond of as an image. Like the La Brea tar pits, if you've been to them, feel very much like a gateway to hell. So it was a natural.
That's very cool. Cole says this just in: Cthulhu invades Dynamite. Don't tell Travis though.
Oh
Cole,
yeah,
like don't let Travis Gibb know. We're not stealing.
Well, I actually showed Travis when he was doing Cthulhu invades Neverland.
Yeah. Well, that's the one coming out.
The fourth issue of Betty Page Unbound, she becomes Tinkerbell and fights Cthulhu in Neverland.
Oh shit!
And by the way, I would bet $1 million Travis has never read that comic. Or I'm not in any way. I don't own Cthulhu. I don't own Tinkerbell. I don't own any of that. But I did get there first. and believe it or not, that came from the premise of Betty Page Unbound was that the publisher, Nikki, wanted, and again, very commercial idea, he wanted Betty in the costume of a different Dynamite heroine on every cover. So we did Red Sonja in the first issue, Vampirella in the second issue, Deja Soroth in the third issue. I said, what do you want for the fourth issue? He didn't really have anything. He was like, whatever, what do you suggest? And John Royal, the cover artist, loves doing these covers of Betty as various other iconic characters. And even long before this series, he had created a cover of Betty as Tinkerbell flying around Captain Hook. And it was for an issue that we never got around to, the series got canceled and they went back to a new number 1, which happens sometimes. And the premise got rebooted and we never used the cover. And I said, hey, can I use that old John Royal Tinkerbell cover? And we'll do Betty becoming Tinkerbell in the last issue. And everyone was on board with it. And so that's John Royal absolutely inspired that whole issue. And when I sat down to write it, again, if you look at the sweep of pop culture and the tropes that occur over and over and over again, I was working on it and I went, isn't Neverland pretty much just Skull Island, which is pretty much just Monsterland, from the Godzilla movies?
Yeah.
Which is pretty much just Real from Cthulhu. Like, what if Neverland was Real? Is where I went with that. It isn't Cthulhu invades Neverland, really. It's Cthulhu was already there. The place where time stops and you never grow up, that's Real. That's Cthulhu's domain. And the idea that Peter and the pirates live on some corner of it that he doesn't even bother with much, but he terrifies them very much. And so that, that's all where that came from, was just this natural progression of, I had this cool cover with Tinkerbell. I needed a big explosive fourth issue. So I was like, well, she's been fighting one great old one each per issue. The natural climax is she goes to Real and faces all of them. And that's where she has to face down Cthulhu. And, playing with those archetypes. But Betty Page, Tinkerbell versus Cthulhu is easily one of my favorite things I've ever written, because I just love everything about that sentence makes me happy.
Yeah. It's not something you hear. Not something you hear all the time. Shout out to the chat. John, thanks for tuning in. This makes me nervous because I have a big DC guest next week, and I really need my DC app to work so that I can read Robert Venditti's Hawkman and impress him when he comes on the show. And I don't know what to do if it doesn't work. So that's scary.
Is it collected anywhere? Do you know?
Yeah, it's in trades and stuff, or
okay.
I could buy it. Or it's probably on Hoopla too. Dan, thanks for tuning in. So also just really good. I'm really glad people have tuned in to the chat. Like, it's a lot of people watch my show after the fact. Like, I haven't found that sweet spot time period to kind of get the chat popping. But while there's people here, I want to remind you that Elvira is not the book that you think it is. Like, we kind of mentioned this, and this has been an issue with several Dynamite books, is that these sexy covers, and I'm a fan of the pinup covers. I love them, right? And I love that they get like real cosplayer covers, or even with Elvira, we get like real photograph of Elvira covers. But it does build judgment, right? Everyone says don't judge a book by its cover, but what do? We always judge a book by its cover. And there is like some people may look at it and be like, oh, it's just a sex book, it's a titty book, it's something like that. And it's so much more. It's so, like, I mean, people that listen to you talk right now, and your excitement for research, you fucking nerd. And like, but I wish I had that mentality, like when I was in college and grad school, in high school.
Oh,
like,
if
I could have found like
mentality when I was in high school and college. It came later.
Because even now, like I write a lot of reviews, but there's part of me I've been wanting to write like articles, think pieces, stuff, like think about comics in a different way. And I start getting nervous. And it's like, and I kind of shut down, and then I quit thinking about it, right? But like that's part of the deal is researching, see what other people are saying, see what's going on, see what's trending, and then you can throw it out there, right? And I love how you bring that into your comics. But like I said, Elvira is a very it's as intelligent as it is funny.
Thank you.
The changing artists, like I've loved all the art. The art's great. Variant collectors, you have your work set out for you, baby. Like if you like variants, this is a good book for you. Each trade has a nice cover gallery in the end too. So Kevin Eastman, I still can't believe that fucking Kevin Eastman Elvira. He doesn't draw sexy entities a lot, right? But his Kevin
is a friend of mine, one of my closest friends, and he offered. He said,
can't say no.
He said, if you ever want me to do a cover for one of your Dynamite things. And I knew that 9, I didn't have any number 1s coming anytime soon. I would have loved to have saved him for number 1. But I said, no, this was probably when I was writing probably 6 or 7. And I said, 9's going to be a new arc with witches. So just Elvira in a witch context, just draw that. And he just did a Red Sonja cover. Which is coming out, and he just did a
he's branching out. He did Daredevil too. Like he's kind of I guess
Marvel should be embarrassed that they have not had him do a Daredevil cover since 1984. Like that it took them almost 40 years or whatever to get fucking Kevin Eastman on a Daredevil cover. It was embarrassing. But Kevin offered and was very kind of him. And
he's such a nice dude. Oh my god, I got to meet him in Kansas City. I haven't met like a lot of like millionaire famous people, right? And it's just like he's so down to earth. He shows up early to his signings and he stays late. Like he just really cares about his.
He absolutely believes that everyone deserves as much of his time as they want. And his signings go comically long because he will let you stand there and tell him about that time you saw a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon when you were 5 and it changed your life. He will smile and listen, and he is really listening. He is not faking it. No, he's just a genuinely good guy.
Yeah.
I would say the only nicer guy than him in comics is Stan Sakai.
Oh yeah, that's cool. Stan. Like he seems like just a sweetheart. Like like the stuff I've seen of him like in interviews and I would love to meet him one day too.
Stan's a real sweetheart. I met him once and embarrassed myself, but he was incredibly kind about it. We were doing our first Kickstarter for Drawing Blood, which is the comic I do with Kevin. And it has a spin-off comic called The Radically Rearranged Ronin Ragdolls, which is a Turtles pastiche. It's very much its own thing, and it's great, and I recommend it highly if you track it down out there. But Kevin was doing a signing with Stan, I think it's San Diego, and it was winding down, and I walked up, and Kevin's, great, outgoing, enthusiastic guy, and he's like, "Oh, Stan, this is my buddy David Avallone. David, this is Stan. David and I are working on this thing together called, Drawing Blood and the Ragdolls and whatever." And I put out my hand, and Stan shook my hand, and I said, "Would you do a cover for us?" Like literally the first words out of my mouth.
Oh, fuck yeah. That's awesome.
The rudest fucking thing. And he laughed and I said, "Oh my God, Stan, I'm so sorry. It just popped into my head and I said it." And I usually control things like that when I meet people. Then I admire. And like 2 months later, Kevin gets an email from Stan. Like, "So, do you want Usagi on the cover or do you want it to just be the 3 girls?
Oh, cool.
The 3 cats. And send me the designs, send me the comics so I know what the characters look like." And we're like, "Oh no, put Usagi on it. That'd be great." And so we do have a variant cover for that first issue, which has Usagi Yojimbo fighting alongside the radically rearranged Ronin Ragdolls. It's been a while and I have to track down. I keep forgetting to ask Stan if someone bought that piece from him, because I would love to own that.
Oh, the original? Yeah, that'd be crazy.
Yeah, I should own that.
I recently
I don't have Stan Sakai originals money, but I could see if I could get a deal from him.
Or just
Yeah.
just blurt out like a payment plan, just like it's just, before he says anything. It's like, well, you do PayPal payments. No, I recently embarrassed myself in front of iconic writer that I got to meet at Planet Comic Con. Jason Aaron did this, like he wasn't on the list to like be at Planet, and because he was in like New York, and he came back and he ended up like hanging out at this comic shop booth, Elite Comics, and he did some signings. And I was so bummed because like I could have brought in like an omnibus or so cool, the Conan hardcover or something cool for him to sign. But no one knew he was going to be there till like that day. And so I ended up buying his new new indie book and just to have something for him to sign. And I'm waiting for him to get there. And I made these business cards that look like X-Men cards. And I gave him my card and I was like, hey man, I was like, I'd love to get you on the podcast, sometime. I know you're busy. And he was like, well, Blake, yeah, he's like, I used to have a guy and but, now it's just me, but he's like, shoot me an email. It may take a few months, and I was like, there's people all around us and it's quiet. Right. And I'm like, for an odd, quiet moment at this con. And I was like, I will wait for you, Jason Aaron. And everybody started cracking up. And then it kind of clicked. I was like, that was a weird thing to say to a writer that you really respect. Now he laughed too, and maybe when I email, like maybe I'll be like, I'm that guy who said that weird thing and gave you the bit. Maybe he'll be like, oh yeah, maybe I'll go on his show. He might be fun. Yeah, but yeah, I
send him the music video for the song from Last of the Mohicans. I Will Find You. Little clanad for him that'll freak him out. But it is getting those interactions right is weird and hard, and you do just have to navigate, and you have to know that they're used to hearing the dumbest shit.
Oh yeah, it's probably definitely not the worst thing he's ever heard.
No. So it's and look, we're all just human beings trying to get through the day. I'm always kind of, when anyone approaches me like I'm any kind of celebrity or whatever, I always think that's the funniest fucking thing in the world. I am the easiest person in the world to find, get a hold of, talk to. It's just, I'm not that fancy, but
you are though. You're kind. You definitely have a big audience, and you have an impressive career in writing backlog. But I felt the same way too when you and Ryland invited me on your show. I mean, Ryland, I get, like, Ryland and I hit it off. He's been on my show a few times. Sure. We had history. But I felt like you and I kind of hit it off, and then you were even like, maybe wanted to help me like get in contact with Kevin Eastman at Planet Comic Con, and then I didn't even have to ask, and you were like, Blake, if you ever want to, like, I'd love to come on your show too. And I got this thing coming out in May, and I was like, I wish booking guests was always that easy, right? And also, not even that, but like you retweeted it, you shared it, and not not like before. You were like, hey, I'm going live with Blake tonight, like, and it's just like not everybody does that, and so like it's very cool of you to treat press and people as casually and respectfully as you do, and I think the same thing about Ryland, like and that's why you both like are so tight and have a great show together too, because you guys vibe like that.
Well, we both believe it's an ecosystem, and the ecosystem is not just the people making comics. It's the people reading them. Yeah. It's the people selling them to the people reading them, podcasters, journalists, all part of it. And all you have to, as long as you're respectful, as long as you're kind, it's very easy to be kind. Yeah. It is the easiest. It's more work being unkind.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not at the point where people are bothering me while I'm trying to eat dinner. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have that experience. And I've seen people be incredibly rude to Kevin. We did a signing, or he did a panel at San Diego last year, and he got mobbed with people who wanted him to sign shit as he was leaving. And I had to, like, not quite beat them off with a stick, but I was kind of like, he does signings that you have to stand in line. Like, this isn't how to do this. This is not cool. It is not cool to do this to Kevin.
Yeah.
Who will put up with it. But every once in a while you need to be a linebacker for him, and I'm not that big, and and get between him and the fans, and slow him down a little bit while he makes his escape. Otherwise, like, I know he does signings where it's like he gets up and has one pee break in a 4-hour period, and he not eating a sandwich, not drinking a coffee, like he's just signing. And, you know, we should all be so lucky. The thing about Kevin is he does, it is perfect. It is 100% genuine. He feels lucky.
Yeah.
He feels that he owes everything good in his life to the people standing in those lines, you know, and that's everything. And as long as you remember that, you know, you can get back, you know, and like I said, we've all had weird interactions, and he's probably had more of them than most. But you know, the bulk of fans are kind and respectful, and, you know, aren't bringing you 20 things to sign that they can put on eBay. Thank God, you know, nothing of mine attracts that kind of interest just yet. So.
Well, like we talked about in those, I found out today that if Dynamite ever does a Kickstarter, you back that. I don't care if you like the property or not. Like, there's been, cause like Cullen Bunn did a Reanimator book too. And they, same thing. Like, they had some that were direct market, and then they did like a one-shot deal, through Kickstarter, and I tried to find that, and it was about $70 on eBay, just like
I gotta say, I was surprised. I think I feel like if you look, some of the Elvira one-shots are available digitally.
Okay.
But it was Cassandra's decision, I think, to never, or at least not in the short term, offer them physically through the direct market or through bookstores. And I think her reasoning is she really likes the idea that the Kickstarters are something special and they're a one-time thing, and you get it or you don't.
Yeah.
You know, and she, you know, she's been at this a lot longer than I have. So, you know, I see the logic of that. I'm trying to convince them to put the one-shots to put the three of them together in a book, because they make a,
like, you know, a trade.
116 page trade isn't bad. So I think that'd be nice. But, you know, all that stuff eventually does get out there. And I'm pretty sure, I feel like I've seen reviews of Wrath of Khan and Omega Mam, like on Goodreads, from people who read them off of, you know, Comixology or Hoopla or wherever. So
also, big missed opportunity not to put this all into a great hardcover and call it the Elvira Omnibus.
Yeah,
edition.
I think we're on our way towards an omnibus.
Nice.
I did want to say, you know, what you said about them not being girly books. You know, you'd like to think that people would look at Red Sonja and see Mark Russell is writing it and go, well, this is going to be
something else.
Substance. That's also a pretty funny book, by the way.
It's like, hilarious.
It's not a comedy, but there's a lot of very funny writing from Mark in his Red Sonja run, which was excellent.
I love how he makes you feel guilty about being a fucking human and then laugh at it too. It's mind-boggling how very simple, like the way you write too is like how you can just land these jokes and this like and take this really historic, iconic entity, this IP, this real woman, well, a fictional woman played by a real woman, but how you can just like become that in this zone, right? And you mentioned earlier that you work together in a sense with like she's got a creative foothold in these properties, and I know in a couple of the issues there was like third wall breaking in the recap where she was like, Avallone is making me write these.
That's one of my favorite. In the first two issues, I had her do the recaps as exposition in the middle of the story. But I love inside front cover recaps. So I then pivoted to the joke of her telling me she didn't want to do the recaps in exposition anymore, and I would have to put them on the inside front cover. And also, look, I will be 100% transparent about this. The fourth wall breaks where she talks to me as a person. I noticed a million years ago, I mean, a really long time ago, that the difference between film directors with Final Cut and film directors who don't have Final Cut, that you've never heard of, but have perfectly fine careers, is that the directors who have Final Cut are the ones who made sure you knew who they were. And that includes going back to Hitchcock putting himself in his films, Tarantino putting himself in his films, Spike Lee putting himself in his films. you have to make yourself into a brand and a character.
Okay.
And when I started writing Elvira, it seemed like a logical fourth wall break for her to talk to me directly. And again, full disclosure, it gets my name in the book. If someone doesn't, not everybody reads the credits on the front cover or the inside front cover. But if you read Elvira comics, you know that they're written by some dude named Avallone who she talks to sometimes.
And so there's been a couple times where you're physically on the page too. Like you're not.
There's
not
one, there's at the end of, I thought when we got to the end of Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, number 12, I hadn't been in the comic yet. And I had no idea we'd ever do another one, honestly. Like,
oh yeah.
I thought it was likely because they had been successful. But, you do a 12-issue run in the 21st century, you may never go back there again.
That's true.
So I thought on the very last page, it would be fun to have me and Dave Acosta show up as the ultimate fourth wall break. And then in Shape of Elvira, I created a character who was a ghostwriter for a famous filmmaker. And I have a life experience vaguely similar to that. So I based that character on me. Eddie Mezzogiorno, who's her writer friend.
They're kind of the kind of love interest.
Yeah, I mean, but
it
was kind of natural to go that way, but I never wanted to seem like some weird ass, me trying to write myself into a love scene with Elvira. I mean, I literally think she kisses him once in every issue.
She removes the spell. Her kiss, brings him back from the
exactly. I did
clusterfuck.
I did it because it was a funny, a reversal on the Sleeping Beauty thing. And it's funny because Juan Samu who drew Franz Strucken, who drew Shape of Elvira. And I didn't make it. I didn't say, hey, you really have to draw me. He drew a guy that really didn't look anything like me. He was skinnier. He was taller. He was the colorist made him blonde. I was like, that's fine. When Juan Samu did Vincent Price, he went kind of off of the model from Shape of Elvira. When Dave Acosta and Italian artist Silvia Califano, who I love, when they've drawn Eddie Mezzogiorno, they are absolutely drawing me. They draw pretty realistic. And it is funny, I do that that other podcast, Pulp Today, which I've been doing a little bit longer than, about the same amount of time as Writer's Block.
Okay.
The 5th issue of Elvira in Horrorland, Eddie Mezzogiorno pulls Elvira out of his TV and into his living room.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to send Sylvia photographs of my living room to use. Just, you got to draw something. You might as well draw what's really there. She drew it before I sent anything. And all of the walls were right. They were in the wrong order, if that makes sense. Like the individual things were all correct. It was my coffee table. It was my TV. It was my bookshelves. She just didn't know how they were all laid out.
Oh, wow.
And I said, how the hell? You accurately drew my apartment. And she's like, I watch Pulp Today while I draw. So I've seen every corner of your, you move the camera around at least 3 or 4 times over the course of the podcast. So I've seen all the backgrounds.
Oh, wow.
She hasn't seen my kitchen. I've never pointed the camera. The kitchen's never been over my shoulder. But the living room has from various angles. My office has from various angles. So she drew it, and she threw a ton of Easter eggs about me and my life in that one panel.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
Which was pretty funny. But yeah, no, and I don't know if you know, also, I got a cameo, though the guy didn't look anything like me. I am now officially in the Turtles universe. Or I should say, in the Last Ronin verse.
Oh, really?
In issue 4, I think, of Last Ronin, there's a meeting of the rebels who are going to assault Baxter Stockman's island.
Yeah.
And the guy giving the first report, a man with a white beard, actually, and white hair, gives a report on Baxter Stockman's defenses. And Mikey says, "Thank you, Commander Avallone. Do you have any, then turns to address somebody else. So I am in the Commander Avallone is in the Turtles wiki. I am officially a character in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles verse. And I'm told Tom Waltz tells me Commander Avallone will come back, but we'll see.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You made it, in my opinion.
No,
like
I forget whatever else I accomplish in my life. That's it.
I'm in the TMNT mythos forever.
And also I love that they used it. They could have used that name for a lot of different kind of characters. I wasn't minor functionary of the Foot Clan. I was an officer in the revolution against the Foot. So I was pretty proud of that.
That's so cool, man. I've been kicking myself. So like when I mentioned I got to meet Kevin Eastman, right? And I got about 5 or 6 minutes with him is what they told me. They were like, you have a few minutes before his signing. Excuse me. Throats stop working. And so like, I was nervous and I was like, what the fuck do you ask this guy that he hasn't been asked a million times, And I was like, I was sweating about it. I was like,
I bet.
I was like, man, what am I going to do? What am I, and the last Ronin is so hot. And I was actually in line to meet him and like just to meet him, get some stuff signed and take a picture, like nothing to do with press or anything. I was just like, I got to meet him on like Saturday at the con was like my day to do what I wanted to do. And so I'm like, I'm talking to the guys and we all we started talking about body count and that like old, like ultra violent Raphael and Casey Jones and like, and I was like, man, would it be cool if they did like a Last Ronin Black label, like what DC's doing. And like, they brought that like hyper violence back and everybody around me was like, oh my, yeah, I'd buy every fucking cover. And I was like, oh, cool. And so I that was like, I made that into the question for him, which, and I was like, I was talking to some of your fans in line. We all talking about how much we love body count and with how dark and gritty and violent, like Last Ronin is like, I was like, have you ever thought about taking it darker, more adult to like cater to your aging audience, and I didn't, I was like, maybe I did ask an okay question. And then he was like, he said this thing that I didn't even think about. He was like, well, Nickelodeon owns it. I don't see them. And I was like, fuck, God damn it.
Yeah. When IDW reprint, I don't think I'm telling tales out of school, but Kevin convinced IDW to reprint Body Count, and it kind of got done without Nickelodeon noticing it. And they were not happy that IDW reprinted it. Like they do not want that image of the Turtles out there at all. Wow. But you did a thing. There's sort of, if you live in Los Angeles and work in the industry, particularly, you kind of get this sort of dealing with famous people 101. And the one of the main things is, oh my God, do not talk to them about the thing that everybody wants to talk to them about. Yeah. Like that's talk to them about the thing that nobody talks to them about, the thing they're proud of that flopped, the thing that they care about, that they think is interesting. George Lucas doesn't want to talk to you about Star Wars, man. You don't have anything to say to George about Star Wars that he hasn't heard. And I sometimes teach at cons and at panels and whatever, networking. And I always tell the story of how I met and became friends with Kevin Eastman. We were both working with IDW at the time, and someone brought him into a bar at Emerald City, a colleague, and they sat down next to me, and we introduced ourselves and whatever, and we started talking. And I don't know how we got on the topic, but we got on the topic of World War II comics, DC World War II comics from the 1970s, which we're both huge fans of. I did not know he had bought the tank from the Haunted Tank at the time.
No way.
That was the tank that's used in obviously it's a comic book, not a movie, so it's not like it's but he bought the same style of tank that the main character drives in the
That's so metal.
GI Combat Haunted Tank issues. He has since sold it, gotten rid of it, whatever.
Oh.
But and then we discovered we had all this stuff in common. Our careers have weirdly overlapped in a dozen ways, and we became very fast friends. But it might have been a year before we talked about the Ninja Turtles in any in any significant way. You know, and I don't know what's going on with it, but I actually pitched him a Turtles thing last summer. That's maybe moving its way through the bureaucracy at IDW, but it's just the funny thing. Like, we had been friends 8 years, and he lives in San Diego, so we don't see each other in person as much as I'd like, but we have these like 2-3 hour long epic phone calls where I pace when I'm on the phone. I look at my phone. I've walked 4 miles while I was on the phone with Kevin, like 4 miles in a circle in my apartment, but 4 miles. And we've been on the phone about 90 minutes. And I had read Last Ronin, and I put it down, and I said, and I had an idea for a Turtles book, which I've never had before in my life. And so 90 minutes into the phone call, I said, I kind of hate to bring this up, but I figure we've been friends 8 years, and I have yet to I have never pitched a turtle thing to you. So I feel like I've earned this from 8 years of not having any Turtles ideas. And I finally got one, and I think it's cool. And I pitched to him, and he said, yeah, that's really cool. Let's see if we can get that done.
Nice.
So, and that, and we'll see if that ever goes anywhere. But my point is, I was friends with Kevin Eastman for 8 years. I pitched him a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic in year 8. That is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
I didn't pitch it in year 2 or year 5 or year 7. And yeah, maybe if something had occurred to me, but I didn't meet him, come home from Emerald City and go, oh, I got to come up with a Turtles pitch.
Yeah.
I gotta find a way to make this work for me. I gotta find a way to get some money off this guy. It's just my new friend Kevin, who has this really cool thing that he created that's a huge part of his life.
Yeah.
And that's always, you got to approach people as human beings.
Very different than your Stan Sakai meeting story that you told.
Yeah, no, I did the exact opposite with Stan. That's what's so funny. That's why that is a story that I am willing to tell about the time I was as uncool as someone could possibly be. And I think I will admit, I think it was because it was in such a collegial atmosphere.
Yeah.
And that Kevin was saying, oh, David and I are working on this thing about cats that do samurai shit.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very logical thing from my mind.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Stan, you could do a cover. You know what I mean? Like, we were talking about funny animals doing martial arts, and I was talking to Stan Sakai. So it was a very natural conversational progression. It was still wildly uncool.
Yeah.
I will never say that I should have done it, even though it worked.
It's like when you meet your friend's drug dealer and you go, so can I get your number and call you sometime? And everybody looks at you like, what's your fucking problem, Blake?
Exactly. Okay, narc. Yeah. But yeah, it's just, you want to be friends with people and you want to make them comfortable. And I always say, people know when you approach them with dollar signs in your eyes, they can see it and they get exhausted by it, and they see it a lot, especially if they're, so you find the thing that they want to talk about and you talk about that. And, hopefully if they're a good person, if they're a nice person, hopefully you can become friends with them. But,
totally.
You don't instantly go, oh, I got a thing for us to work on together. Someone sent me a friend of theirs who was up and coming, who was a wannabe comics person. And like his first email to me was like, what can I do for you? And I was like, oh, that ain't it, man. I don't need anything. I didn't ask you for anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I get that he thinks that that's an ingratiating thing to do. What can I do for you? I mean, what's more generous than what can I? No, but you're not offering it out of generosity.
Yeah. It's like a business. You've gone past like camaraderie, friendship into like business relationship territory.
Like I didn't ask for your contact information. I didn't ask for, so I don't want a goddamn thing from you. And that's not like, I shouldn't want anything from you. You're a stranger. I don't know the first friggin' thing about you. I don't want to work with strangers. No one does. No one wants to work. I mean, and every once in a while you do, and it's great. A lot of times you get assigned, especially when I was up and coming, I got assigned Dave Acosta on a one-shot. And we had a really great working experience together. And when Dynamite asked me to do my second series with them, I said, this Dave Acosta guy is great and the art's really terrific, and I would like my comics to look like that. So can I have Dave Acosta back? And then, for a long time, they didn't even ask me. They were like, so Acosta, right? And I'm like, yeah,
Nice.
we'll have Dave backing it. And then Saladin Ahmed has kept Dave too busy to work with me for a while. But
yeah, they work
they're
together.
doing great stuff together. Terror War and I'm spacing on the name of the Dracula book that was so good.
The Dragon.
Was that it? Yeah,
Dragon. Kickstarter one that he's putting out on Substack. Yeah. I still need to read that. I'm so bad at backing Kickstarter campaigns, and then it just piles up.
It's a lot of stuff. I do have like if I ask if I buy the digital copy, I'm never going to read that.
Right. Yeah.
Like
they get lost.
I am supporting you because I like you and I think your thing looks nice, but if I order paper, I probably am going to want to read it, but I'm so far behind.
Yeah.
So, like when strangers ask you to read scripts, I'm like, I got scripts from close friends I haven't looked at in 2 years. And I'm supposed to put you at the bottom of that. You want to be on the bottom of that pile where I'm going to get to you in a decade. It's just, and look, I like to be as helpful. When people ask me for that kind of help, what I usually do is say, make a coffee date with me a week and a half or 2 weeks from now. And what I will do is put your script on an iPad, show up 90 minutes early for coffee, read it while I wait for you.
Yeah. And
then we'll have the meeting. And that's the amount of time. Like, I can do that. But if you just give me an open deadline and read it when you get a chance, forget that, man. Yep. It's never happening.
That's right. I do the same thing with my show. Like, usually I don't read the Kickstarters until they come back on my show. Right. And then I have to read the previous issues to be ready to talk about the new, cause I get a lot of repeat guests. Cause I know I'm fun to talk to, but it does shock me how much like a lot of people do ask to come back on my show. And, I have a decent audience and I know that people trust me and know that I have good taste. And so like, I may not get you a ton of backers, but like, I think people know that when they come on my show, it is good for maybe a handful of backers or so, or like, I don't,
sure.
I hope anyway. But it shocks me like how much people want to like come back and even like, some like bigger names or even like Rylan when he came back on this last time. And I was totally, cause he goes, Blake, I got the campaign going. I'm already tired of talking about it. Can I just come on your show and you and me just vibe and I'll throw out there that the campaign's happening and they can buy the book. And we talked about movies and his new movies and, his family and like, and so, like, I get it, but yeah, it's, I never thought like David Hazan, who was in the chat earlier, like he's been on 4 times now, I think. And we talk a lot outside of scheduled interviews and things, and he always tells me shit I'm not allowed to talk about, even though I know that if I did talk about it, it would sure get me like some Substack subscribers and some views, but I'm not going to do that.
I've had a Substack page open to actually start a Substack for I think 3 weeks now, and I still haven't done it. I don't have a mailing list of any kind. I mostly just rely on the socials. I just started up on Blue Sky a week ago.
Nice. Is it everything you thought it would be? Are the roads paved in gold and there's
here's the interesting thing about it, that I will say, a lot of semi-famous people who don't follow me on Twitter follow me on Blue Sky. And I think it's because the ratio of signal to noise is so low over there right now. There's so much more signal than noise that like people who probably didn't, especially like comics people who may not have noticed me in their group of 20,000 followers. Went through the 100 followers that some other comics person had and went, oh, comics writer, follow. Yep. Like we're all following our colleagues over
like what we did with when Hive started. Before it crashed and before it fell apart for
exactly. So what I've gotten a whole bunch of follows of people who have never followed me elsewhere on social media, which I find funny. So it's kind of been a fresh start in that. And also humble brag, I was invited by a very famous person, and she like she posted a welcome to me when I showed up. So
nice.
That probably boosted my engagement a great deal.
Yeah, I've never had quieter responses than like when you actually hear the crickets than when you ask people for a fucking Blue Sky invite. It's just,
I mean, I still have none to give. But yes,
I thought when you got on there, you got a handful. So they're still like metering them out real conservatively.
I think you have to be on for like 2 weeks before you get any, actually. Oh. And the thing is barely 2 weeks old. So not a lot of people. Yeah. No, I was invited on. I have a Twitter friendship with the next captain of the Enterprise, and she kindly no longer being a Borg, she very kindly invited me on. She posted about being on Blue Sky, and I said, "Oh yeah, I haven't checked that out yet." And she direct messaged me, and she was like, "You want an invite?" I was like, "From 7 of 9, sure, I will take an invite." I will take an invite to anything from 7 of 9.
Yeah.
So that was very nice of her.
I'm just interested because there's been a couple people say that it's like they're like, when this is going to kill Twitter in like a month when it goes live, and I'm like, I don't know that that's going to happen. I still love Twitter, right? Twitter was there for me when I sound so lame when I say this, but like none of my real life friends read comics or care about that stuff, and sure. Like Twitter was a place where like when I was getting back into comics and I could talk about what I was reading, and then other people were like, "Oh, I read that too," or "Oh, this is cool. Like, this sounds awesome. Like, I'm going to follow you and learn new comics." And like, it made me feel good. Like, I was like, "Oh, sure. Cool." And of course, like over the years, all that led to here we are now. I have a fucking like platform and a show and stuff. Right. And so like, I owe so much of Blake's Buzz's success to Twitter. And I've met like real friends and made real relationships and great networking opportunities. And so like, I don't really like the narrative of like, let's kill Twitter. Like I don't like where it's headed.
Yeah.
It's a bummer.
I think it's more about that. I think people like me who are still on it, one, we love the idea that Elon Musk is paying $44 billion to be insulted by me. I think is fantastic. I love the headline, thin-skinned narcissist buys insult factory. is pretty fucking sweet. So like other people are paying $8 a month. I'm paying nothing to insult the people paying. I think there is no better social contract than other people paying to be insulted by me. It's like, I'm Don Rickles and they pay to cover for me to humiliate them in front of their friends. That's awesome. So that's why I think we're all kind of hoping that it becomes intolerable to him and he's forced to sell.
Yeah.
And it can go back to the way it was. But I'm also perfectly fine if, like right now I have 11,000 followers on Twitter. I would be a clown to walk away from that completely.
Yeah.
And as long as I am free to call Elon Hubbard a maniac in his own living room, I will continue to do so. That is awesome. When that becomes a problem, I'm gone.
Yeah.
And that's easy enough to do. But in the meantime, I'm trying to port people over to other places. I'm hoping to start a Substack and start up a mailing list over there and try and get people weaned away from it. But 11,000 people is not something that I go like, oh no, I can trade that for a site where I have 200 followers.
Especially when even with the press that Dynamite does, and even with your backlog with them and name recognition, like you're still making indie comics, and part of indie comics is that like circulating your own works and reminding your followers where to buy your stuff and when it's coming out. And if you have a platform with 11,000 people, many of which like your work and follow you for those reasons, to where you can just be like, I got a new Elvira comic coming out tomorrow, or then if you go to a new platform and only have a couple hundred people, it's crazy.
In indie comics, 11,000 people buy your comic. It's a pretty huge success.
Yeah.
Honestly, like that's the median indie comic, from what I can tell, sells about 4,000 copies if you're lucky. And I know what the what's the word I'm looking for? What the margins are, and that's in 3,000, 4,000 copies is like barely surviving.
Yeah.
But to have the ear of 11,000 people, you'd be a fool to walk away from that. again, the man who runs the place is awful, but you know what? Most of the other startups are also run by different
right?
awful people.
Yeah.
You know, Jack runs Blue Sky. Jack's the scumbag that thought Elon was going to do great things for Twitter. So he's no good. You know, some people have tried to convince me, oh, you shouldn't be on Spoutable because Chris Boozy is a thin-skinned narcissist. I'm like, you're telling me that on Twitter. I was like, if Boozy is a thin-skinned narcissist, he's one that hates Nazis. So that still makes him infinitely superior to the exploding rocket guy.
Yeah.
You know, so like it's I mean, it's like there was that minute to touch on a controversy. There was that minute where Dynamite was materially helping Ethan Van Sciver and Comicsgate a little bit.
I remember that. That was a bummer.
And it was very, that summer was like one of the worst times of my adult life. The cities were on fire. Trump was possibly going to be reelected. There was a plague.
Yeah.
And I had
a lot going on.
Yeah. And I had to publicly distance myself from my publisher, who has been very nice to me. Nikki apologized. He cut off all contact with those people. I think, honestly, Nikki is a good guy, and he got taken advantage of by an old friend who he did not notice had turned into something very different than the man he used to be friends with. But why did I bring that up? Oh, yes. But people were like, you know, you should stop working for Dynamite and work somewhere else. And I said, where?
Right. Yeah. Just walk away from.
And without naming, I will get myself in trouble if I name why every other company has some reason you shouldn't work there.
Yeah.
Not some of them, not currently. DC finally got rid of its serial sexual harasser that they coddled for over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
Dark Horse got rid of the guy who was biting people at conventions. But there's a skeleton in every single one of those closets, and you have to decide which one you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the, you know, that's the ugly truth of it. It's like making money working for a movie studio. Like, if you want your work to be seen by a lot of people, some evil giant conglomeration has to own some small part of it. Otherwise, no one's going to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it's, you know, I mean, I don't know. Like I'm white, and if someone made me a millionaire, I'd probably be a prick too, but you know, I'll never know. I'll never be able to, I'll never know what that's about. Yeah. But no, I get it. And, you know, it's a bummer, and it's weird, and everything's weird. Everything's been weird. It's like we came out of quarantine to a whole different fucking world. Now it's like, we keep thinking like we're returning to normalcy, but I mean, I think now we're starting to realize like nothing's fucking
different.
Normal.
Yeah. It's a different normal. I always say that I think you have to go back to 1946 to a time when the entire planet had PTSD. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like there isn't some small corner. Like, I'm sure there was some small village in Chile where World War II didn't really affect them at all, but it kind of did anyway. You know, it affected their government. It affected South America, all of that. I think it's the same with COVID. It changed the world for almost everybody in some small way. And now we're in a new world, and it's a new world for publishing. And like a lot of things, new worlds mean new opportunities.
Yeah.
You know, I think the realignment of the comic book industry is not even remotely over. And there's a lot of opportunity out there. The way Kickstarter became so predominant during, like, the reason I did 3 Kickstarter books for Dynamite is because there were no stores.
Yeah.
There was a minute when you could not go to a comic book store, and we needed to keep the ball rolling. So we did that. You know?
Even now, like, you know, I'm doing a lot of PR work now, and I'm doing freelance PR work with Kickstarter campaigns to help promote and kind of, you know, organize the social media components of the campaign, and, you know, keep, you know, try and make it fresh and exciting, so that we're not all just posting like a link every day. Right. And like, and try and keep everyone organized and on top of it. And because it does, I don't see it, because I've made now career out, or I'm trying to make a career out of it, and I've built a platform from it. But I can see how creators, because I've seen them come out like when a campaign goes live and they're like, I got a campaign coming, I'm gonna be real annoying the next month. And I don't like how people do that, because like you selling your product and trying to make something of yourself is not being annoying, right? That's the American way.
Right.
But like but anyways, there's so much on Kickstarter right now, and that's what I am seeing in the struggle is like, man, I can make a really funny YouTube short. I can make a pretty good promo image with a clever tagline, right? That's like intriguing, and it's still a struggle. Even when I'm tweeting these things, the writers tweeting these things, the artists are tweeting these things, and then on Instagram, on Facebook, putting it anywhere you can, and it's still a struggle to get seen and to get pre-launch signups and to get backers, because it's so saturated. It's insane. It's great. It's awesome that like anybody who wants to make a comic can make it now, right? But there's so much on there, and some of a lot of it's good, some of it's not, right? Some of it's
and a lot of
in between.
Like anything else, now you used to not have to fight through so much noise to get the signal, but that's gonna, when you make something more democratic, the tools of filmmaking became more democratic. It didn't make the quality of films at film festivals did not go up appreciably because of that. You know what I mean? Like, some people got to make films who never would have gotten to make films, and that's great, and they made great films. And some people are getting to make comics who never got a chance to make comics, and that's great. But that also means more crap.
There's like, there's a big pile of stuff to get through. It's
not
the algorithm.
Not everybody who couldn't make a film because they couldn't afford it was Mozart. Was some great filmmaker in training. A lot of them, not so much.
Exactly. It's great that it's out there, but not just. Because you can, if you have money, you can make a comic, right? Like you can pay a writer, you can pay an editor, you can pay for great art.
If you have no money but you can draw, you can make
a comic. Yeah. But it's crazy how like I think the new horror icon should be the fucking algorithm, right? Like I'm really surprised we don't have more like movies, stories, shorts, comic books about like this all powerful, all menacing algorithm that is in control of everything that we decide, that we get, like it controls our libido, our hunger, or like our basic human instincts. And it, because it's kind of getting there. Really,
there was a thing in can't remember which season of Star Trek Discovery where there was an AI that had been created by, I think, Starfleet's
and it like jumps around from like body, it like it contaminates people, right? I'm way behind in that show, but I've watched that. That. Okay, and the Matrix, yes, the Matrix was also similar. But I mean, even that was more like a mask, though. Like we were being controlled by a computer. Okay, so we're all in the fucking Matrix now. Like that's, I don't know. Maybe Skylar was right. Maybe I want the steak to taste like steak, and I don't give a fuck. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is anymore.
Well, I mean, again, and with the Matrix, Philip K. Dick got there 30 years before they did, and I actually think it's a funny thing. I have this thing where I think that ripoffs of Philip K. Dick are generally better than the straight adaptations of Philip K. Dick, at least in the present day. Like Severance is one of the better Philip K. Dick shows, and it has nothing official to do with him. It's just his kind of ideas and his kind of framing of reality and all that.
I got obsessed with him in college, and it's he's wild, man. And just to think of like someone writing genre fiction who is now like studied and then like, do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and how that blew up, right? And became Blade Runner. And now Blade Runner is an animated series, and it has a sequel, and they're probably going to make more. And there's tons of comics, and the comics are really good. Like the Blade Runner comics are fucking sick. And just that little part of what he created and how it's expanded. But then like when you think of like Minority Report and all these.
The thing about Philip K. Dick is I think that like Lovecraft and like Kafka to a degree, he became his own genre. Like it's not just science fiction. And I, as an aside, because this is something I have a great interest in, Philip K. Dick's career has this really interesting shape to it that aligns with some of my notions about art versus entertainment. He wrote serious novels about life in Northern California that were terrible. He wrote dime novel science fiction that was mediocre. It's when he decided to put science fiction in his novels about his life in California that he became a genius.
Oh, wow.
It was when his best period is when he stops writing serious fiction and he starts taking the stuff he was interested in serious fiction and putting it in, when he stops condescending to science fiction as a genre and goes, you know what? Nobody's buying my shitty serious novels. What if I just put robots in my shitty serious novels? And then people will buy them. And it's something that occurred to me reading a book of his called We Can Build You, which is essentially just Lolita. It's about a guy who's in love with his best friend's 14-year-old daughter, but they're making robots in the book. And I finished it and I was like, that was a great book. What did the Lincoln robot have to do with anything that was going on in that book, except that it was kind of cool? And then I sort of read up on him and went and saw the evolution in his career and read some literary criticism of him that basically said, no, you're not imagining it. This is a thing that happened. Philip K. Dick at a certain point stopped writing his serious novels and started trying to make his science fiction deeper and more interesting. And that's when he starts getting the Hugo Awards, and that's when things start really happening for him. So I think I would say if my podcast Pulp Today has a thesis, this thesis is that there's this distinction between low art and high art, and it's bullshit.
Yeah.
And that if you do a good job on your low art, it's secretly high art. And if you do a good job on your high art, it's funny and entertaining.
That's one of the best things I learned in college was one of my thesis advisors. I wanted to take this sci-fi class and she was like, no, she was like, we've talked, I've had you in class. Like you need more real literature experience. You don't need this genre shit. You need real literature. And I was like, I didn't like what she told me. And then I was talking to the professor who's teaching the sci-fi class. And I was like, I really want to take this, but she's really pushing me not to. And he goes, Blake, don't ever let anyone tell you what real literature is.
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah. Like that's not what we're here to do at this university. That's not what we want our students to do when they leave this university. And that was one of the coolest things like a teacher's ever told me. Also because you're also not used to that too. And like the faculty is like, no, fuck that person. Like they're wrong. Yeah. Like don't listen to your college advisor. So yeah, it was very interesting.
Well, I think I talk about this a lot on the show, but the term pulp,
yeah,
in and of itself refers to the quality of the paper.
Yeah.
It's pulp paper. It's cheap paper. Everything that is pulp fiction was printed on cheap paper. Oh, by the way, Cole, the answer is We Can Build You is the answer to the question. What's the Philip K. Dick book that has similarities to Lolita? But so the difference between what we think of as high art and low art, a lot of times is what someone decided was high art, so they put it in a hardcover, and what someone decided was low art, so they put it in a pulp magazine or a paperback. That's pretty much it. That's where those distinctions come in. Someone decides that the Maltese Falcon is an entertainment and the Great Gatsby is high art. There's murders in both of them, by the way.
Yeah.
There's actually 2 murders in the Great Gatsby. Well, there's a manslaughter and a murder in the Great Gatsby. And there's 2 murders in the Maltese Falcon. A couple of off-screen murders at the end, but, I don't know that they count. But anyway, point being, Dashiell Hammett's an incredibly talented novelist, an incredible student of the English language and user of it. And it's basically the person signing the checks and deciding what gets published where.
Yeah.
Is the reason why we study F. Scott Fitzgerald in high school, but no one is assigning Red Harvest to high school students or The Glass Key, which are great books.
I haven't. David just referred this. I've heard of William Gibson, but I've never heard of pattern recognition. I just Googled it though. It sounds kind of cool. Who has time to read books without pictures anymore, guys? Like for real. I got shit. I got a David's. I have to read David's books. I owe him a review. He's trying to get me to read a fucking novel. Give me a break, man. No, it does look cool, David. Thank you.
I've actually, in the last couple of years, I've been writing prose for the first time since the late 80s, and I'm really enjoying it. Yeah. I did a Kolchak short story, was the first one I had done in a really, really long time. And that was in the Kolchak anthology, the 50th anniversary, I think. And I'm doing some more stuff that I think I signed an NDA on that. And I wrote a short story for an upcoming anthology that's going to be announced tomorrow.
Oh, cool. That's exciting.
So and I kind of connected a dot. My father was asked to reboot a public domain character in the 60s and basically turn him into James Bond. And I decided to write a short story connecting how the guy in the 19th century became the super secret agent in the mid 60s. What science fiction or fantastical elements made that happen. So that's a fun story.
Wow. Well, that's good. I'm gonna be keeping an eye on the internet tomorrow. So you're having a big fucking day tomorrow.
I'm having a big week.
Reminders, everybody who maybe just joined the chat. They're like, "What the fuck are these guys talking about?" I came here to talk about Elvira and comic books. David has Elvira in Monsterland #1 coming out from Dynamite tomorrow. He's got a new unannounced project going to be announced tomorrow, prose piece, which is also exciting.
Yeah, that's one piece in an anthology. But yeah, I think they're announcing that I'm working on it tomorrow, so I can't announce it tonight. But yeah, it's a fun character and it's a fun piece, and it's something I'm very much hoping to continue working with the character. So we'll see where it goes. Yeah, that's a great thing about public domain characters is I can actually continue to work with them and no one can stop me.
Yeah, it's an interesting it's definitely an interesting deal, like how you can like what David Pepose did with Wizard of Oz and crazy stuff like that. It's cool to watch people take these like iconic elements of like our media history and do what they will with them, right? Take them to these crazy places. But David, I've kept you for almost 2 hours. It does not feel like 2 hours at all, man. It was just like
it passed quickly. Thank you.
But yeah, I do want to remind everybody, Elvira, Monsterland #1 from Dynamite tomorrow. It's got some beautiful covers. Take your pick, but you should pick it up. It's very cool. You can pick it up and start fresh, but if you go back to this very great big tapestry of a story that David is constructing, it does build and gain momentum and create ways. But I can't recommend it enough. I had such a blast doing this podcast homework and getting ready to talk to you and like, yeah, those issues fly by. They read real quick. I love the art. It's funny, so intelligent, great action. The time jumping, universal jumping shenanigans, like all these things that I did not expect to tumble into in an Elvira book, right? And then from going into movies to hell to being chased by Vlad and interact. Yeah, it's a wonderful.
I'm very happy with it. I needed a villain for the first arc, and I just thought it would be very funny.
He's back. Yeah,
to use Vlad the Impaler and to write a really specific version of him. He's not, obviously he's got a lot of differences between the real Vlad the Impaler was not quite the guy that I've made him out to be, but I just think it was a funny approach to draft. Actually, my favorite joke in the entire series is when Faust talks to Vlad and says, "I sold my soul for all of the knowledge of the known universe, and you sold your soul for Romania."
Yeah.
And not all of her, like a
little part of it,
the saddest, darkest, most ugly part of Romania. Yeah. Like, dream big, man. Well, in this issue, Vlad is finally taking Faust's advice and dreaming very, very big.
He's scheming, and I'm very, very excited to see where it goes. Well, David, the polite podcast host that I am, I keep saying podcast is a live stream, but I'm probably going to double dip it. It's probably going to be a podcast too. Because guess what? I need those metrics, baby, and I'll get them wherever the fuck I can get them.
Exactly.
I'll pry them out of your cold, dead hands, audience. No, please don't die. Stay with me. I love you all. You're great. But where's a good place to, like? I know you said you're starting a Substack, so maybe that's not ready. You're still on Twitter. Where's the best place to keep track of you?
The nice thing about having an unusual last name is if you Google me you'll find
Pops up.
all of
Yeah.
You'll find all the things. My website is davidavallonefreelance.com because GoDaddy are bastards and they squatted on davidavallone.com. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not going to pay you thousands of dollars for davidavallone.com.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it. And yeah, those are the two easiest ways to find me. I'm on Twitter under my name. I'm on most social media. I think on Instagram, I'm David_Avallone_freelance. Like it's all pretty easy to find. And
unless you're trying to follow him on Blue Sky, because none of us are special enough to do that yet.
But and if you're in if you're listening to this and you're in LA County tomorrow, I'm at House of Secrets in Burbank from 11:30 for probably about 1:30, because then I'm going to get hungry. And then Saturday I'm at the legendary Golden Apple from 1 to probably 4.
Nice. Doing some signings. That's cool, man.
Signings, hanging out.
Area, I would go meet you and get something signed by you. Because like I said, I fucking love this book, and I'm in it. Like I'm definitely going to be reading the following issues and just excited to see where you take it.
Thanks,
you got a great voice for her.
Thank
and just your humor and storytelling. I really dig your stuff. Everybody who tuned into the chat tonight, like, thank you so much for hanging out. You guys hung out with us for like 2 hours. That's so cool. Thank you so much. If you listen this long, pick up Elvira tomorrow. Like, what's there? Spend $5 Get a cool
there's
cover.
No explanation for listening this long and not reading the comic. What's wrong with that? That makes
they're
no
just
sense.
Like they're just sitting here like, I don't believe anything these people say. Now they're talking about
I hate this guy, but I can't stop listening for some reason. It's some ASMR thing, I'm sure.
Yeah. They're just like rage napping with us in the background. Hey, that's cool. I'll take the minutes that you spent listening to us. It all goes into that YouTube system, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly.
That's what we're but no, I really do. Like, thank you everybody for chatting, for commenting, for hanging out. David, thank you so much for coming on my show, dude. It was a blast to talk to you. It was a blast to come on your show as well, man.
You were a great guest. It was great to have you.
Well, everybody listen to that. Blake Morgan was a Blake's guest. He was a great guest. He was a great guest, but I was not good, not subpar, not even okay. I was great, ladies and gentlemen. I was great. And I'll take that. I'm in it to win it. So unless anybody has anything else left to say, hold on. We got one more comment. Is it anything important? It's the mustache. It's a good fucking mustache.
Well,
man.
It's my, I'll tell the quick mustache story.
All right.
I didn't have this for a very long time, and my wife suggested I grow one. I think it was probably for a Halloween costume. I can't remember right now which one it was, but I held on to it, and I did a con. I did WonderCon, and I was being interviewed outside WonderCon by someone on camera. I can't remember about what. And I posted the picture of myself standing in front of WonderCon. I think I had a gray suit on, glasses, mustache, thinning hair. And it was over the shoulder of a news cameraman, and there was, a microphone being stuck in my face. And someone commented, a friend of mine commented, Commissioner Gordon, do you have a statement about the Batman? And I thought that was the funniest fucking thing. Like, I hadn't previously thought that, but now I think I'm going to stick with lazy Commissioner Gordon cosplay for the rest of my life. Like, there are way worse things than looking like Jim Gordon, I think.
Travis just popped in. Said he heard you ripping him off.
Yes, I am ripping you off in 2017. It might have been 2018, but that's okay. Nobody, don't worry, pal. Nobody remembers. Nobody remembers. It's cool.
All right. Well, Commissioner, I'll let you get back to Gotham.
I'll get back to, I see the bat signal on the horizon. So.
This was so fun, and again, like, thank you for coming on the show and in doing that, introducing me to a new series of comic books that I don't know that I would have picked up if not being forced to. Well, I wasn't forced, but I'm of the belief that you should read the books that your guest puts out. I think it's fair.
That's a nice thing. But yeah, thank you for being so positive about them and for evangelizing for them. I appreciate it.
No, man, I really do love him. I mean every word. And the last minute tune-ins, Travis. Thanks for hanging out, man. We appreciate you. And everybody, thanks for tuning in the chat. Remember, love more, hate less, read comics. We say it, we believe it, we live by it. It's a good slogan. It makes a good T-shirt too, which are there for sale if you guys want to buy them. Kevin Eastman said they were cool. He did really say that, but
I believe it.
I don't want to put that out on like
no. That's a good motto for him as well.
But I just, everybody, I really appreciate you. I do apologize. Liana and Sarah had to cancel. So this Thursday, right now, we don't have a show. You'll just get me once this week. You guys will fucking live with it. I know I will. I'm going to take a nap probably. But yeah, next week we got some cool stuff coming out. I will announce it. Get your little butts or big butts. I'm not a butt sizist. Whatever size ass you got, get it into a comic shop tomorrow and pick up Elvira in Monsterland #1. I promise you won't regret it. It's a beautiful, fun book, and I'm so excited to see where it goes. David, this was great. I hope you have a wonderful night. And
thank you, Blake. You
man,
too.
Just like best of luck to you. And everybody, we'll see you the next time we see you.
It's Blake's Buzz Live.